It's NWO Chat Radio. From the foothills of the Shenandoah, welcome to NWO Chat Radio. Your hosts, Dryax and Protocon. Remember, you can always email or live chat from our website at nwochat.info. And now, here are your hosts, Dryax and Protocon. NWO Radio.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. We've been back from Christmas now, so this is our first episode of 2012. Protocon's taking some time off, so we have a guest host here today as Saki. So we'll be having kind of a general conversation about things. Our next topic was supposed to be, I believe it's shelter, but since Protocon's not here, and it's been a while since we've done a show, and a lot's kind of happened. We're going to focus on that. And the two major topics that have taken place is the NDAA, and for me, I think the biggest thing that kind of worries me right now is the whole Iran situation. I don't know how you feel about that, Saki, but it bugs me.
It is pretty worrying. That it seems like they're gearing up for war, or at least some kind of attack, which sooner or later will escalate to a war. And, in that region, it's going to be a complete disaster, especially with, Yeah,
so let's go into the NDAA stuff. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, even though it is reasonably important. So, and if you just to recap, the NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, on New Year's Eve was signed into law, and it basically authorizes the military to indefinitely detain, without charge, people suspected of involvement with terrorism. It includes U.S. citizens on American soil. Basically, it sets up the U.S. as a battlefield, and we can all be chucked into prison on a whim.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, so it's really disturbing. And then you've got like side things that are occurring, like the TSA setting up checkpoints and at bus stations and things like that, instead of the usual airport kind of place you'd normally see them. And I just think it's all really security theater to make us think that we're okay.
That's what it always has been about, the illusion of safety.
Right. Fortunately, some Montanans have decided they're going to recall their senators who approved the military detention bill. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, they basically say that they'll be recalled by qualified electors entitled to vote for the effective office of successors. Basically, they're just going to hopefully get rid of them. I wish that a lot more states would do it too, but it passed so overwhelming numbers that it was pretty ridiculous. There's basically no... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was reading about that, and it said that they could, recall them on the grounds of physical and mental lack of fitness, incompetence, violation of oath of office, official misconduct, or conviction of certain felony offences. Now, I'm thinking that has to be a violation of the oath of office, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought so too, because their oath, I'm going to assume, I haven't actually seen it recently, but the oath is to the Constitution and to uphold the principles of that, and so basically that's the violation of it.
Yeah, the bill is in direct violation of certain parts of the Constitution, isn't it? I'm not too familiar with that, but...
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There's the Posse Comitatus Act, which was passed after the Civil War. I think it was actually one of the... Actually, it was... The reason for it was a town that's not too far from where we are. I think it was Fredericksburg, Virginia, during the Civil War, the Union troops basically ransacked the town and harassed women and raped them and all kinds of things, and then started to act as a police force. And that's what prompted the act, the Posse Comitatus Act, which basically says that the U.S. military can't be used for law enforcement or police activities.
Yeah.
And so, it's obviously overturns that act. In my mind, it kind of authorizes martial law, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I have this kind of crazy theory, and I don't know if you remember back to 9/11 and all that craziness, that back during the Cold War, Eisenhower put together this, I don't know, group or committee or paper called Continuity of Government Plan. Basically ensure that the government continued to run.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
And on 9/11 that got enacted, and I think parts of it are still going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Weren't there some congressional hearings in the 1980s about that act? And some people that were called in to testify, they actually said that they couldn't testify because the material was so classified.
Yeah, I think that
I could be mistaken, but I'll have to look that one up.
No, you might be right. That might go to the whole FEMA detention camps theory thing that floats around. But I think it was to do with the when they were questioning Oliver North and the Iran-Contra and the Rex 84 camps.
I think that is, yeah.
And that was for detention of U.S. citizens, So it's like all these things that, 5-10 years ago that every conspiracy theorist person kept talking about seems like they're coming true. And I'm just sitting back watching it and like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, I could have told you so. The
but
biggest
thing.
Remember, go ahead.
Everyone who talks about conspiracies, they're a nutcase and they can't be trusted. They can't be taken seriously.
Yeah,
and
I know.
What they talked about, comes into fruition, and everyone's like, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that I'm kind of wondering how long it's going to be before, like, Anonymous is considered a terrorist organization and they start chucking them into detention camps.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if that started happening.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to throw a few of them in prison already for, denial of service attacks and whatnot, but it's really hard to prove those things, I guess. Well, it's not really that hard, but knocking on someone's door 20 million times to me is not hacking a computer.
Yeah, or getting like 20,000 people to stand in line for a shop and not buy anything.
Yeah.
That'll be the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
So it's like civil disobedience. It's sort of a peaceful form of protest that we have to crack down on because this is so dangerous.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my thought is too. Occupy Wall Street has got a lot of backing from Anonymous, and they're just sitting in parks or whatever, and they're getting shut down all over the place. And I kind of feel like it's kind of fizzled out in a way, at least from the mainstream news and stuff. But the Anonymous, like, specifically, what they're doing or what they do online with these denial of service attacks to me is no different than like getting 10,000 people to come sit in the lobby of a business and and disrupt it. And it's just a digital version of that. And in the past that hasn't been criminalized. And the thing that irks me the most, like the Occupy Wall Street stuff, is that they get arrested for walking in the road, but you look at the civil rights movement in the 60s, they shut down the streets, and it was like they didn't get arrested for that. I mean, they got beaten up, and so did Occupy Wall Street, but I'm pretty sure that when you've got people, like hundreds of people walking, they're not shutting anything down.
Yeah.
And so, have you heard the Joe Lieberman clip from the NDAA?
Yes, I've heard it, and it's absolutely disgusting. The things he can, as a elected official, can say those things.
Yeah, it's pretty kind of scary, and then to just have the discussion that it was a part of. I'm not going to play the whole clip, but I've got the clip to play for Lieberman. But the part that bothered me the most, it was a discussion between him, Lindsey Graham, and I can't remember the woman's name, basically about what levels of torture they were going to allow the government to use.
Yeah.
And President Obama basically signed into law that the CIA couldn't use any interrogation techniques that weren't approved by Army field manuals. And the NDAA basically overturned that, so any level of torture is now acceptable again for the CIA, and especially defending, and interrogating Americans. So let me play this clip here really quick, and I think you're going to find it pretty disturbing, I'd say.
People should.
Yeah.
When a member of Al-Qaeda or a similar associated terrorist group is captured, I want that person to be terrified about what's going to happen to them in American custody. I want them not to know what's going to happen. I want that the terror that they inflict on others to be felt by them as a result of the uncertainty of not knowing that they can look on the internet and find exactly what our interrogators are going to be limited to.
And so right there, he's basically going over what he doesn't want to show up online. It's like you can look up what the interrogation techniques are for the Army field manual, but he wants to basically allow it so that they're in fear for their lives and in terror themselves.
Yeah.
So it's just pretty ridiculous. And then you've got the president, which is just a complete numbnuts in my opinion these days. I kind of supported him at the beginning, but he's obviously, basically he's all talk.
Yeah. So are most presidents. They're just puppets for whoever's actually in control.
Right. The people with the purse strings, essentially.
Yeah.
Money to elite, whatever you want to call them. And so you've got, signs the defense authorization bill on New Year's Eve. Let's see, I've got this Think Progress link up just because that's the one I found the closest. But it says he signed it with a signing statement that was like, I don't know how many pages long. It was a pretty dang long read. It says, I've signed this bill despite having serious reservations with certain provisions that regulate the detention, interrogation, and prosecution of suspected terrorists. It goes further on to say, it says, my administration will not authorize the indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens. Indeed, I believe that doing so would break with our most important traditions and values as a nation. And it's like, why did you even sign that?
Yeah, but the funny thing about that is that it turns out it was Obama's administration who demanded that they put in the clause that allowed the indefinite detention of American citizens. It was his administration who demanded they have that in the bill. So him, saying that when he signs the bill is just bullshit. It's just, not to mention he also says that his administration won't use that. Well, his administration is going to last for a maximum of 4 more years. And as Stephen Colbert put it, it's pretty much Obama's way of saying, fear more years,
Yeah, I mean that thing, my administration, Who knows who the next president's going to be? I don't know. If the people who are running right now are any indication, other than say Ron Paul, he's going to get reelected in my mind. I just don't see any other way
Most likely,
he's going to not get reelected. Mitt Romney is, part of the 0.001% of the wealthiest people in the world. So, he doesn't represent most people on any level.
I don't think any of the candidates apart from Ron Paul does.
Right. And Ron Paul kind of supports Occupy Wall Street in principle, I guess. I don't know if he actually supports them completely, but
Well, either way, he supports the people's right to do the Occupy Wall Street as a protest.
Right.
As opposed to most other politicians who dislike it and say that, they should be shut down, they shouldn't be allowed to do what they do.
Yeah, and so it's just really disconcerting because you've got this here, and this bill is basically codifying into law the rules they've been breaking since the authorization of military force after the attacks on 9/11. So it's basically, and it's usually the way I've seen government work, and it's like, never mind, I won't go into that. But anyway, so, basically they break the rules, and then they write the rules to justify the rule they just broke.
Yeah.
Right, so, that's kind of how I've seen it work in different situations. And
It's pretty much how it always works.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you've got them claiming that we're terrorists and everything, and yet, it just kind of seems like completely the opposite, that they're terrorizing us, they're making us afraid of them, and it should be the other way around.
It should always be, but
it doesn't work that way. Which kind of leads me into this whole thing with Iran. I don't know if anyone's been keeping up on the news recently, but it seems like Iran is in the news more and more every day now. There was just an assassination of a nuclear scientist in Iran, and a clear, Mossad CIA operation, if you want to call it that, because who else is going to target Iran's nuclear scientists?
exactly.
And so, that's a state-sponsored terrorism.
So, in a way, Iran is technically justified attacking both Israel and the US if it turns out they were the ones behind it.
Yeah,
If we're going to follow the US sort of foreign policy for the last 60 years,
yeah,
but especially the Bush doctrine of preemptive attack,
Yeah, it definitely can kind of basically lead to that. And if we back up a couple weeks to just maybe before or after Christmas, Iran decided that it was going to do little war games in the Strait of Hormuz. And so the U.S., doing your standard chest puffing maneuver, it's like, saying, the U.S. Fifth Fleet not allow Iran to disrupt the traffic of the Strait of Hormuz. And so that's the headline that got picked up first. Not that Iran was doing the war games that prompted the comment, it was that just all of a sudden out of the blue the U.S. is saying that we won't let Iran disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, and then you've got it portrayed like Iran is purposefully trying to do stuff when they're actually just having a war game scenario in the Strait.
Yeah. But, they have to be painted as the enemy if they're ever going to justify an attack.
Yeah. And
they have to be painted as the aggressor, the bad guys.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating and irritating because it's just going to lead to ruin for that region, if not greater. I'm kind of skeptical on Iran's military ability myself, but when what I'm seeing is from like Iran's navy and stuff, a lot of them are just like really small, like patrol boat kinds of things with multiple missile launchers on them.
Yeah, I don't really know, but I don't see Iran as having this really high-tech, advanced, big navy fleets.
No,
not that I heard of anyway.
No, they don't. But I don't know if you've I think I mentioned this in the last show, but I could be wrong. And I can't quite remember where I've read it, but the U.S. had a war game. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was a red team versus blue team kind of thing. And the blue team, is the big U.S. military. Well, the red team is the bad guys that, they're supposed to destroy the fleet or whatever they can do. And basically what had happened is this admiral or command guy, whoever that was in charge of the red team, decided he was going to take a different tactic than what modern military and modern navies do, and he basically went low tech. He launched planes by Morse code lights, so signal lights. He used motorcycle couriers to transmit messages back and forth to his command staff. And then, and instead of firing like a single cruise missile or a few missiles at a ship, he overwhelmed its defenses by sending hundreds of missiles at the ship at the same time, and it was on paper it was the largest U.S. naval loss since Pearl Harbor. They would have had an estimated casualties of 20,000 men, and that was within the first day of the exercise.
That is pretty frightening.
Took out 16 ships, aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, whatever, and took them out. All with low-tech means, little rubber dinghy boats overwhelmed them with missiles, and that's exactly the route that when I see Iran on TV and everyone laughs at their little rubber dinghies, I'm like thinking, okay, the strait's not that big, so they could easily have tons of missiles right there across the strait to target U.S. ships. Then they've got all their little boats that they can, launch missiles from. Supposedly they have these, I don't know if you've seen the footage of it, but they have underwater rocket torpedoes.
I've not seen any footage of that.
Yeah, they've got that they basically load them onto these little patrol boats, and these rocket torpedoes can be launched from like a couple miles away, and there's no defense against them. You just have to pray that they're going to get out of the way. Well, I think they got them from Russia, and that was a few years ago. So, you nuclear tip one of those, your strait is shut down. Pretty dang quick. And so, one of the big things I think, I don't know if it was this week or if I'm just thinking incorrectly, but they're starting to move towards harsher sanctions on Iran's oil.
Yeah. And to be, that seems like a provocation, trying to provoke them into, taking the first strike or doing something that can justify, going to war.
Yeah, and it's kind of that's what my thought is. That's like a act of war basically, or that you're basically blockading that country from being able to do business. But I think that whatever it was that I heard, unfortunately I can't remember what bill it was or where I'd seen it. Basically allows the U.S. to stop block sanctions, and that anyone who trades with Iran we wouldn't trade with. Well, China and Russia have said that they're not gonna. Yeah, so like, are we gonna stop trading with China and start a trade war with China
You can't,
over Iran?
because that'll destroy your economy, in a week.
Yeah, so that's pretty stupid. But and then of course we've got let's see, what do we got here? We've got the U.S. selling $60 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia. And they're selling more arms to Oman and the UAE and all those other countries that are right there across from Iran.
It seems like it's just setting up for a war.
Yeah, and it's basically about intimidating, I think.
Yeah.
And so
it's like trying to corner Iran and feel them isolated and alone, and basically corner them until they actually react and do something about it, and then suddenly they can say, "Oh, look, they took the first punch. Now we can go in and do what we want."
Yeah, I just don't understand the mindset. I mean, the people who are running things must be psychopaths or something, because it's, they have to see that it's just going to lead to a war, and that innocent people are going to be hurt. They're going to be killed, and it's crazy.
Yeah, but war is profitable,
Yeah, I wonder how much more profitable peace is.
For certain companies, not really.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, you can take a company like Halliburton,
mm-hmm.
which made a fortune from the Iraq War. They're probably still doing, I guess.
Yeah, I think actually Halliburton was also trading with Iran recently, and that was discovered.
Yeah, they helped sell Iran nuclear technology back in late 70s or early 80s, I think. There was some congressional hearings or Senate hearings not long ago.
Oh, that's right.
I can't. I gotta look up that again, but I'll get back to it.
All right, that sounds great. I'm pretty sure you're right, though. I've seen that too, and I want to say that part of that was, I think there was an operation back during the Clinton administration where they passed, the CIA passed the specs and details on how to actually build a nuclear bomb to Iran, but it had one key flaw in it. And what they ended up doing is Iran discovered or realized that there was a flaw there, because they had the same guy, was it AQ Kwan or whatever his name is, from Pakistan, the guy who created the Pakistani nuclear program. They had him come and look at it, and he discovered the flaw, and so they were able to reconstruct those plans. And that's probably something you have to Google, because it's pretty obscure, and it's been such a long time since I've seen that mentioned anywhere.
Yeah.
And then was it just today as well? The U.S. has warns Israel on strike. Basically, it says U.S. defense leaders are increasingly concerned that Israel is preparing to take action against Iran over U.S. objections, and have stepped up contingency planning to safeguard U.S. facilities in the region in case of conflict. And was it a couple weeks ago? They just sent thousands of troops deployed to
Israel.
To Israel. Yeah. Although I think I saw that, and this isn't on Russia Today, and sometimes I think Russia Today is full of crap, but I think their expert was some dude in Japan, so I'm not 100% sure that that's really reliable. And to me it was more like for military equipment training than anything else.
Yeah. Russia Today is biased, as all sort of mainstream media is, but I'm not sure where their bias is, you know. Is it pretty much just trying to paint,
it's just,
you know, the US
really
as
weird.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, you know, some days they have interesting things and other days they don't. And, you know, I'm not to nag on Alex Jones, but some days his stuff is just kind of silly and outlandish at times, but eventually it's kind of come around, you know. Everyone thought that the police state wasn't happening, blah blah blah, and then, you know, 5 years later you have like things like the NDAA, and he's frequent on Russia Today, and so for topics specifically like the NDAA, he's really good at those, but sometimes he gets his co-editors like Kurt Nemo and stuff, and some of their articles are just really off base and not really well researched.
Yeah, I think they do the mistake that even I used to do, and I probably still do, that they see what they want to see, and they just go with whatever they can find as the basis for the story, because that's what they wanted to see.
Right, yeah, and so that, you know, it's very, very interesting as to how that all came about. You know, he's been able to grow his media a lot, and it's just kind of interesting, you know, especially since, you know, like, all these things are happening and then gun sales are skyrocketing and in the US, and it's like, you know, what is really going on?
Yeah, we can sit here for hours and theorize about what's going on and what's going to happen, but it looks kind of clear what is going to happen.
Yeah,
if you ask me.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's like they're getting ready for massive civil unrest, I think. Whether that civil unrest is going to come from people simply being fed up from the economy crashing completely, from some attack, false flag attack, or just from some new strain of bird flu, it doesn't really matter how it's going to happen. It's pretty much just going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the importance of being prepared and being ready for it. And, you know, I think that, like, for example, when this whole Strait of Hormuz thing happened, oil's jumped like a couple bucks that day, and it's kind of keeps slightly increasing, but they're having like supply demands, and that's why they haven't actually gone with the oil sanctions yet totally, because Europe still gets a lot of their oil from that region, and Iran especially, and so they're trying to get Saudi Arabia and the other countries to ramp up oil production so they don't have supply issues.
Well, they've been trying to get Saudi Arabia to do that for years. And it hasn't really happened. I mean, Saudi Arabia is going offshore looking for more oil.
Right.
And, you know, drilling offshore is, at least 10 times more expensive than, you know, drilling on land. So if they got all these untapped oil reserves on land, why are they going offshore, which is 10 times more expensive?
Yeah, and that, you know, so I think that peak oil there, at least peak of the production, you know, is really something that doesn't get talked a lot about, but I'm kind of half and half on if I believe in peak oil, like oil production completely ceasing, but, you know, there's definitely peak production issues and supply issues going on, and
yeah,
I think Iran actually, Saudi Arabia actually did say that they were going to try and increase their output, but we'll see.
Well, they always say that.
Yeah, it's like it's
every time.
It's like it's like they're putting into place all the chips, on the game board before they actually launch anything, and what that catalyst event is going to be, it's like, who knows?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. But funny thing about Iran and oil, if it's going to be a war with Iran, oil prices are going to skyrocket, obviously.
Yeah.
And the strange thing about that, especially for me who lives in Norway, that Norway is going to profit so much from that. I mean, we got this massive surplus on our budget every year because of our oil sales and oil export.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of interesting, because we've got like the strategic petroleum reserves here and stuff, but I just kind of wonder how long that'll last.
Yeah,
because it'll be pretty difficult to if something does happen, and that could bring chaos pretty quickly. I wasn't around during the 70s in the U.S. I'm too young for that, but I just kind of wonder what that whole oil crisis was like back then. Because apparently they basically were like, if you had like this certain letter in your license plate, you couldn't get gas that day. You had to get it the next day, or
yeah. They even had a ban on using cars on certain days in Norway, from what I read.
Huh.
But back then, when we actually had a royal family that cared, they actually took the subway, which is pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. I don't know how many people
Royal
actually do
family,
that.
Getting on the subway just to show that they were aware of the situation, and they sort of did their part as well. I mean, it was probably just a show, but still.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because the president here does those kinds of things, and they usually just it's like, oh, whatever, it's a silly photo op.
Yeah. That's all it is, photo ops.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I mentioned this the last time I called in on the show, but when Al Gore came to our town to have this global warming kind of speech, and they actually drove this electric car all the way from Oslo into the town so he could drive around in this electric car between meetings. And it turns out it was more carbon emissions getting the car back and forth from Oslo than it was from him driving a SUV around this town instead of the electric car.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show that's a photo op, because they didn't really care about what they say they care about. It's just...
Right, and that's my other thing. That's one of my other issues. But the whole electric car thing and Prius and everything, they're great in concept, but once you put it into practice, it's like they're getting your minerals, your precious rare earth minerals, to make the lithium-ion batteries in, some place in South America, and then you put your engine together over in Europe or Japan, and then that gets shipped to wherever they put it together. So you end up with more carbon emissions from the construction of the car than the life of the car even offsets, and it's just stupid.
That's pretty much how everything works because of globalization. When they outsource, whatever to the cheapest country. I mean, the funny thing about Norway is that we catch a lot of fish, and then we ship the fish to China for processing, and then it's shipped back to Norway for selling. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? Why isn't that illegal? If we care so much about carbon emissions, why don't we make that illegal? Why don't we make it illegal to buy fruit out of season, to buy vegetables out of season,
Yeah, and you can grow fruit and vegetables out of season in like hot houses and things like that.
Yeah, obviously.
So we get avocados from the grocery store that are grown in New Jersey in a greenhouse, and that like I can go to the grocery store and get them right now, kind of thing. And it's January, winter. It's pretty weird, but that's the cool thing with being able to grow your own food, especially in hot houses, or greenhouses. You can get a lot of off-season foods.
Yeah. But the entire idea of shipping fruit and vegetables from South America all the way to Europe during the winter just so we can have fruits and vegetables out of season, if global warming and carbon emissions are as big a threat as they say it is, then surely that should be made illegal.
Yeah.
People can go without strawberries during winter if that's the case.
Right. And if you want strawberries, grow them in your own greenhouse or something.
Yeah.
They're not that hard to grow. And
yeah,
so
a really short winter cycles for strawberries.
I'll use this as an example. My wife bought wheat from the grocery store, like the actual grains of wheat, and it sat on our countertop for I don't know how long in its plastic bag. We didn't do anything. We were going to grind it up, use it for flour, but never got around to that. So we're like, well, just go plant it in the bed, because the beds don't have anything in it right now. And we've got like a foot worth of wheatgrass growing right out of it. So I don't know if it's summer wheat or winter wheat or what it is, but it's pretty cool to see that.
It is.
And hopefully, we'll end up with some wheat that we can use by the end of the season.
Yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, I guess going back to the Iran thing, I found the YouTube clip that says Halliburton charged with selling nuclear technology to Iran, and this is from C-SPAN. But the thing is, I'm not sure when this happened. But there is a what's this guy's name? Dorgan, Mr. Dorgan, whatever. But he was apparently elected to the Senate, I think, in 2007. So they're no more than 4 years old, these hearings. But what they're talking about is stuff that happened back in the early 1980s, from what I can remember.
Yeah, I think I saw it. This is the clip I saw the other day, and yeah, I'm not exactly sure when that happened, because Byron Dorgan has got like a lot more gray hair now, I think.
Yeah.
Than what's in this clip, so surprised when that came out, but we should figure that out.
It doesn't say on his Wikipedia when he was United States Senate. Oh, hang on. Oh, sorry. I had that wrong, actually. Dorgan was re-elected in 1998, so first in 1992 was only won his first seat.
Okay.
Then who the hell did I look up last time? Because last time there was some other people in this clip. I found out it was 2007 when that person was elected. But I guess it doesn't matter. So it just sounds a bit familiar, US or US companies selling something to what will in the future become the enemy and then go and blow the shit out of them,
Yeah.
Pretty much Iraq 1990, 1991 all over again.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel like. It seems like every day in the news we're hearing something about Iran's done this or Iran's done that or this has happened in Iran or this person's dead in Iran. I mean, there's covert war going on, obviously, that they just haven't, basically let on.
Yeah.
So my question for you then is, let's say, you're coming home from work or school or whatever, and you hear that someone's attacked Iran. What are you going to do? What is your first thought?
My first thought would be to go online and check what the fuck's actually going on.
Yeah.
But my first thought would be it's time to start preparing for economic collapse and an escalation of war all over, because that will spread. There's no way Russia and China are going to allow that to happen. And if it does happen, I mean, especially a country like Russia or China might take advantage of that themselves and do what they want to do, because obviously China has a lot of issues with a few, I should say, islands of countries that they don't want to sort of let go of. Same with Russia. So I'm thinking that they might want to try something on their own while the light is on US, Israel and Iran.
Yeah, and it seems like the U.S. is kind of encircling them a little bit in that region as well. But China, the international standard is that you claim 12 miles from your shoreline into the water, and that's considered your territorial waters. Well, China considers 200 miles to be their territorial waters, and so they do a lot of crap. Like, didn't they ram one of our ships a couple months ago? Ram one of the US
China?
ships? Yeah, China did something to one of our military ships. Can't remember what it was.
I found something. China says, Pentagon says Chinese vessel harassed US ship, and that's 2009. Sorry.
Okay. I could have swore there was one more recent this year, but maybe it was 2009. It's been a while, I'm sure.
That's pretty much the only thing when I Google for China, US and ship. That's pretty much the only thing that comes up, and that's the 2009 incident. Well, that was regarding Taiwan, apparently.
Yeah, it's usually regarding Taiwan. It's pretty... Another one of those situations. It's just kind of stupid.
Yeah, so, as I said, if war breaks out with Iran, you can bet that China will probably smack down hard on Taiwan.
Yeah, I
like
think
Russia would do on Georgia and other countries,
Yeah, I think I could see, the U.S. and Israel getting into it and hitting Iran pretty hard, and then once they get bogged down a little bit, then China take advantage of that and roll themselves into the whole fray. You've basically got World War III. I kind of think we're already in World War III anyway. It's just a slow
I think
war.
we've pretty much been there since 9/11 happened.
Yeah, I kind of agree. What was that you were saying to me earlier about? What was it Wesley Clark speak?
Oh yeah, the Wesley Clark had a speech at the Commonwealth Club of California in 2007, where he said that the U.S. will attack 7 countries within 5 years. Now that was made in 2007. We're now in 2012, obviously, so that's the 5 years. And I got to look at what countries was listed again. It says it was Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Iraq is taken care of, Libya is taken care of, and Syria and Lebanon is pretty much... They haven't really been, directly attacked, but pretty much the governments have been overthrown and disrupted. And pretty sure there's some more pro-US people in power right now, which is pretty much what happened in Egypt as well, dear old Mubarak sort of stopped, he stopped basically being US's pet, so he had to go. And then you got Somalia, which, again, that's a country that's always been ravaged by some kind of attacks or war or internal conflict.
Right. And
Sudan,
what I think
pretty much the same. So it's just Iran left.
Yeah, it's just that Sudan's split in half now or something like that, supposedly.
Yeah, they got their independence, the South region, last year, wasn't that?
Yeah, something like that. And what I think is interesting about Somalia, apparently the top half of Somalia is reasonably stable. It's the lower half that, gives everyone the headache. And the troops that are moving out of Afghanistan, that's where they're getting restationed. They're getting restationed in Somalia. So they're not leaving the region at all. They're just going to the other side, waiting for Iran, is my guess.
But then again, when you look at where Somalia resides, that is a very, very strategic coastline to control, which is why I think they started focusing on this piracy thing. Now, to me, Somalia has every right to do their piracy thing, if you ask me, because foreign companies and fishing vessels, they've been dumping nuclear waste and they've been exploiting their waters for fish for decades, and Somalia has never had sort of a military and a proper state that could defend their waters from these kinds of intrusions. So
was Italy one of the big ones that was doing that?
I know there were some French companies involved, and they have actually been caught doing it. Of course, nothing happened after they got caught. But to me, their piracy activity is just a natural reaction of what happened to them, and it still goes on. And the fact that they are so poor, they haven't really got a choice in the matter,
Right, and they obviously the water's poisoned and polluted, so they can't really fish or anything.
And the funny thing that even Norway has been very, very active by sending military personnel and boats down to Somalia to protect from these pirates, And it just seems that it's a covert way of getting troops and military personnel in the area to do whatever they got planned.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think for myself, because the last couple of days, and as I said, it seems like more and more I'm starting to get into one of my panic modes. I'm be calm and cool and like, okay, everything's going hunky-dory, and then it's like, oh crap, I don't feel like I'm prepared for any of this crap. I don't have my emergency kit in my car sorted out or anything like that, and I've just been like really, really lazy. I've been busy too because I got a new job over the holidays.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to get my just like a basic emergency bag in my car, so that if something were to happen where I didn't have any electricity or anything like that, then I could just at least walk home. Like from where I work, I'm like 10 miles away, 20 miles away at the most.
I'm glad you just mentioned electricity, because over the holiday, this massive big storm kind of hit Norway, more like a hurricane, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it knocked down, it did like huge damage, especially to certain areas. And a couple of days after, there was this woman who apparently contacted the media, and she said, "Oh, I've been without electricity for 2 days and they still haven't fixed it. She couldn't eat, she couldn't shower, she couldn't do this." And I'm thinking, you couldn't eat? You couldn't make coffee or tea? What? She sent a picture of where she lived. She had a huge fucking lawn in the yard. She couldn't go outside, get some snow and melt it and boil it by making a fire.
Yeah, I think we had...
It's just... why would she be sitting around for 2 days bitching and crying about stuff she could actually do something about?
Yeah, and I was like sitting... Yeah, it had a similar experience here in that a couple, was it last year or year before? I don't know. We had pretty decent sized snowstorm, and we were without power here at the house for a little while. Probably no more than 24 hours, but long enough that we had to cook a couple meals on our camping equipment. We have a small camp stove. You're not supposed to use camping propane stoves inside, but we kind of did anyway, and I think we used it on the front steps at one point too. But it's like, just use some common sense. But I sat there tonight. My wife was really, really hungry because we hadn't eaten a whole lot today, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, at least we're not in Africa, especially Ethiopia, so we probably wouldn't have a whole heck of a lot to eat right now anyway. And then I got to thinking, well, if things really, really got bad, it'd be pure panic for some people if they started running out of food.
Yeah, they would panic, and I'm always a fan of Cody Lundin, that hippie from Dual Survival on Discovery. Mm-hmm. He says that survival is he says 90% psychology.
Right.
It's all about your mentality, the approach you take, and of course preparation helps. But it's like that woman who was without electricity for 2 days. She was pretty much just sitting around waiting for electricity to be back up. And she didn't do anything on her own to sort of help with the situation. Which I think is pretty much what most people are gonna do when something happens. That you're just gonna be sitting around waiting for the government to swoop in and fix everything. And it's probably going to take them, I guess, a week before they start realizing that, stuff might not be back to normal. Maybe we should start doing something.
Yeah, because you've got to think about it. A lot of places now are big box stores. You've got your big box supermarkets. If the power goes out, they're not going to be able to service customers. And if you're, I'm thinking on terms of a massive EMP strike on the U.S. This is the only time I could see that something like this would actually happen. And funny enough, I was dreaming last night. I don't know if it was dreaming or just half asleep, half awake, thinking about Iran stuff. But I dreamed that DC was nuked, and then we had some type of EMP event. And so that's why I bring it up, because it's fresh in my mind. But the power goes out, your car's not working, people aren't going to be able to get to grocery stores, but let's say that cars are working or something and just the power's out everywhere. After a good few days, 3 days worth of food in grocery stores? And if they're a big box,
right.
if they're a big box chain and they don't have electricity to run their cash registers, you think that they're going to come in and work and try and figure out how to actually service customers without,
of course not,
electricity? And I think I speak from experience of this, because a few years ago we had a hurricane come through here in Virginia, and power was out where I was at for a good week at least. And then in most places it was almost 2 weeks. And I remember hearing that that the supermarkets were closed and everyone was told not to report to work. To stay home basically. And it's okay, that's great. That's fine. We were able to manage for just that week. But how long would it have taken before we kept hearing, don't worry, it's going to be, your electricity is going to be on soon? Would it have taken 2 weeks? When is that seed of doubt in the way things function going to crop into people's minds? And once the seed of doubt starts creeping in, that's when things go crazy.
That's when the panic starts happening. But I guess what I think scares, not scares people, but what's going to be a problem for people is if electricity goes out, there's going to be no cell phones, there's going to be no internet, there's going to be no way of communication with the people you're used to communicating with. Because I don't live near where my friends are, where my family is. I communicate with a mobile phone and the internet.
Right.
And so I'm going to have to relying on the people who live in my community around me, which I can just walk to their door and talk to them. And I don't think, especially not in a lot of places, I guess urban areas and big cities where people tend not to interact too much with the neighbors and the community.
Mm-hmm.
How are people going to deal? Are people actually ready to just go knock on the neighbor's door and ask, I'm going to need some help with this, and if you ever need anything, I'll help you out with that. Are people prepared for that?
Yeah, and what I found interesting, you're talking about big cities and people and neighbors, and you need that community. You need the neighbors and the help from them. What I found interesting here was, I'm in a more rural community, and it's more like people aren't talking to each other. But I went, further northern D.C., and, strangers on the street are willing to help you with anything. So it was very kind of a weird situation when I visited there at one point, because I was like, that's just really, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And from my personal experience, I'm not the greatest person when it comes to talking to strangers around me, just having a conversation about whatever. But whenever I do that, it's always with old people, typically above the age of 55, 60 years old, mm-hmm. Retired people mostly,
right?
Because they're used to that. They used to have a smaller community. They used to be able to just go and have a conversation with whoever. They used to interact on a more personal level than I think we do today. Because why do I need to talk to the people around me on the bus when I got a cell phone with games and music and internet access?
Yeah, and that's one of my issues I've got with technology. I think it's great and everything, and I work in technology on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of funny, and I don't know how this is for most techs, but it's like I get home and I don't want to touch a piece of technology.
Yeah.
I'd rather do something else more constructive that's away from a machine. Because I guess I can see how, how it just kind of destroys your social dynamic, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, I've got pretty much, I wouldn't say I've got the same problem, but I do have a problem with being way too dependent on technology.
Yeah, I think it's funny, when something happens that, my first tendency is to want to get to the chat room, because that is where a bunch of information is going to get posted really quickly, and I can catch up on it really quickly, and it's like, I'm finding ways that I can connect to the chat room when I'm, like, away from anything, like, putting IRC apps on my BlackBerry or something.
Yeah. But I think the scariest thing about technology is, there was a couple of years ago, this professor did a study on how, he pretty much said how Google changes how our brains work, but I think it's the internet and the accessibility to information in general, and that people don't remember the information anymore, but they remember where to find the information. And that's going to be a big problem for me, because I'm exactly like that. I don't remember, the specifics of information anymore, but I'm very good at remembering what keywords to search for to get that exact article or that exact website.
Yeah, that's
so
how I
without
find
the internet, what am I going to do? Because, I'm going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, and that's, I think especially having like disaster preparedness books or information, that the internet, you rely on that so much. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not, but on our website, I've under the link section, I've listed 2 torrents that have a lot of disaster preparedness stuff, and I'm getting ready to put up a torrent that has about 15 gigs worth of stuff. But I've got to catalog it all because it's not cataloged. There's no titles for anything like that.
Oh dear.
And so I'm going through. I've got like the first volume out of 27 cataloged already, and it's pretty interesting stuff. It's like it's basically like if you had to have the knowledge of everything to restart society, you could probably find it in this set of torrents.
Yeah.
Like dentistry, like how to fix people's teeth, anesthesia, building houses like log cabins, just tons and tons of stuff.
Skills which people used to have, and skills that no one have anymore.
Yeah, basically, and
I mean,
it just looks like a lot of good information.
Take any 18 to 40-year-old person and ask them to skin an animal and get it ready for dinner. Any animal,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people would be able to work it out just by, starting out and going, figuring it out as they go. But for a lot of people, they're going to be completely clueless. That will include me, but I think I should be able to work it out as I go. I think I'm one of those.
I've never actually done it. I think I've seen it done once on YouTube recently. But it's funny you say skinning animals, because it reminds me of my old biology class, and we had to dissect rabbits, and we had to skin the rabbit, and that was pretty, wasn't very pleasant. But you're smelling formaldehyde and all that stuff, and so we skinned it, and then we had to cut it open and take out its heart, and then the teacher wanted us to take out its lungs, and then we're supposed to take a straw and stick it down its esophagus to inflate its lungs. And I'm sitting there looking at the rabbit, and the rabbit's head is like facing me with its mouth. I'm like, wait a minute. Just stuck the straw down the rabbit's mouth instead of cutting the lungs out. And then we're like, the teacher saw what we were doing, like, oh, everyone come and look at this. So the whole class started looking at it, and it was like, they probably thought we were pretty weird. But I don't know a whole lot of people that would be willing to like actually kill an animal and skin it and prep it to be able to be eaten.
Yeah. I wonder what if a complete collapse happened. I wonder what vegans would do.
But I'm kind of.
Would they still not be eating meat?
Well, that's probably. I mean, it's possible, but they'd have to be growing a lot of it, and that's actually part of my problem. I'm kind of forced to be a vegan because I've got a genetic condition.
Yes.
Where I can't eat protein.
I know.
So, that's going to be a very interesting challenge, but mushrooms have a lot of protein in them. And that serves as a pretty high protein substitute, I think, for a lot of vegetarians and vegans. And so that's kind of what, I'm growing or getting ready to grow. I've actually got a mushroom kit for Christmas.
Lovely.
So I can grow shiitake mushrooms. And it was funny because my brother-in-law got it for me, and he works with kids who have to do community service. And they all saw the kit come in, and so they all think, I'm like into psychedelic mushrooms, and they all want to meet me now and stuff like that. And there's like shiitake mushrooms for food,
Yeah, but I think when it comes to growing food, let's say that disaster strikes in September, October, November. Now, depending on where you live, you pretty much, especially in Norway, you can't start growing food until April, pretty much.
Right.
You know, and that food's not going to be there until, you know, the earliest might be up around, you know, May, June, especially potatoes, I guess. But, you know, it's going to take a while before you have the food accessible to you. So
that's why I think that if you're not prepping now, then you, or at least, you know, starting a small garden so you can get the basics down and understand how gardening works now, then, you know, you're going to be in some hurting times, I think.
Yeah. Although, luckily for me, a wife of a friend of mine, after they bought the new house, they had this big yard, you know, and they pretty much transformed it into one massively big garden. Wow. With the growing stuff. And she did her research. She actually did the research on, you know, the specific plants and vegetables. You know, what kind of nutrition does this one use? What kind of nutrition does it put back in the soil? Okay, then I need that type of plant next to that one because that one absorbs what this one puts out and it gives back to the other one, etc. So she's really done her homework. So I know if something happens, she will be the first one to go to.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, a lot of people will remember that she grows, and so they'll try and go to her farm or whatever, and you know, maybe they'll raid it, but then they won't have their own food source. So maybe maybe this is something you can offer to them, that you'll come and help out with the garden, and you can pick up the basics, and then you can actually, you know, share in that if something does go bad.
Exactly.
And so, you know, that's an alternative if you don't really think you're comfortable with growing a garden, or you live in a city situation, but there's, you know, possibly a garden nearby or something, or, you know, what they make those public gardens.
But, again, the skills she picked up is, you know, everyone used to know that. You know, crop rotation, why it had to be done, when it had to be done. You know, what crops could it grow on that type of soil, etc. This is what people they used to know this because they had to.
Right.
But as time has passed on, we've become so dependent on everything that we don't know anything anymore. If, you know, collapse is going to come.
What I think is interesting, you know, there's a TV show or short TV show that
you know, collapse is going to come.
What I think is interesting, you know, there's a TV show or short TV show that I think was done in Britain, the BBC. It's called Victorian Farm. Have you seen that?
Yes, I saw both the Victorian and the Edwardian Farm.
I think I saw Edwardian Farm, but it's been a while. But that was really, really interesting, and that's kind of my thought of how things would end up turning out.
Pretty much. I mean, I really enjoyed the Edwardian Farm, but that's because it was 12 episodes, like one episode per month, while the Victorian Farm was 6 episodes. It felt really rushed and compressed, and they didn't really take the time to, you know, show what they actually did and explain stuff. While in the Edwardian Farm, they actually took the time to explain why they did certain stuff, you know, how was it done, and it was a lot more, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I kind of wish that they'd explained the sheep husbandry a little bit better than they did, because, you know, I want to get sheep here. More so as pets than anything else, because, you know, I can't eat the meat, and my wife doesn't like lamb, but and so I don't have to mow the yard, basically. And that's kind of what boils down to why I want it. But, you know, certain areas in the U.S. they have these things called covenants, which are laws, and so some places you can't do those sorts of things. And basically it's like an agreement, like, you can have them, but your neighbor has to sue you in order to enforce it.
What?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Kind of a crazy setup. And then you've got homeowners associations, which are like, they're basically mini governments in themselves and cause a whole lot of problems. And those are the ones you usually end up hearing about, like, oh, they denied, like, someone the right to park their truck in their driveway or whatever.
Just a big load of extra bureaucracy we don't need.
Right. So, well, hopefully we'll be able to do another show next week. Tomorrow should be pretty
back
interesting.
on schedule.
Yep, back on schedule, and hopefully Protocon is able to get back on. Maybe we'll have you back on again, or get some other callers calling.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
And it's been a pretty good discussion, I think.
Oh, I had something I wanted to mention before we ended, but I forgot that.
Oh, okay. Was it about growing food?
No, it wasn't. It was about Wesley Clark and the interview
right.
he did again. He pretty much openly said that there was a policy coup done by the very same people who are behind the Project for the New American Century. Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Cheney,
Right.
Crystal, those, douchebags.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that. I'll probably see if we can post that clip to the website when we list all our show clips and everything. So I like to try and do that as well. So hopefully you've all enjoyed the show and everything, and are looking forward to some more episodes, and hopefully we'll be back on schedule. I think the next topic is going to be what was it?
Shelter.
Shelter,
I think.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Or was it security? No, shelter first, I think.
Yeah, and shelter first, and then security. Those are like the four major topics of prepping in my mind: is food, water, shelter, security.
Yeah, I would like to add a fifth one to that list. Medicine.
Yeah.
Not
Communication and
necessarily
medicine,
but some type
health.
of medicine, health, healing.
Right. Yeah, that's
which
definitely
is
on our
probably going to be
topic list as
mostly
well.
it's going to be mostly herbs and plants, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Especially after a collapse.
Yep. And the other thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the episode is that we're still got our contest on. I'm going to extend that contest to get a few more entries in, and then probably at the end of the month we'll switch it over to a poll so everyone can vote in that poll, and whoever has the highest rated name for our show is going to win a medikit, and I'll post that medikit on the website. I've been meaning to do that, but I just haven't had a chance. It's actually in our store. If you go to the store and then go to the health section, and it's going to be the 88-piece travel kit, I think, for the Medic first aid auto travel kit. I've got one of those here, and I think that's what's going in my emergency bag, along with like a trauma field kit, I think, or at least quick clot, and then things to start fires with. And what I like about it, and I didn't realize at the time, is it comes with a solar blanket, and it didn't say that at all when I looked at the specs on it. I was afraid I was going to have to get another solar blanket because of it. And it's actually got a lot more space in there too, so I'm going to put a couple more things in there, like chapstick and maybe another fire starter, maybe like waterproof matches or something like that. So
yeah,
kind of like be an emergency kit with an emergency kit kind of thing is my goal. Because my big fear is, like, you've got this kit and someone sees it and they're like, oh, I want that, and they either try and take it from you or whatever. You just grab what's in there and run and leave whatever else is there, kind of like a chameleon with his tail who drops off. You know, and then you can get out of bad situations that way. So
yeah, I hope that more people in the chat would, interact more with the show in the next coming episodes. It feels like it's pretty much me, you, and Proto.
Yeah, I think that some people kind of missed the start of the show, and it's been, it's our first show since
yeah,
the holidays and
it's
everything.
Saturdays as well. It's usually family time for a lot of people, or they're out, with friends, whatever.
Right. So, all right. Well, thanks for being a guest on our show again this week, Saki. Appreciate it.
It's all right. I enjoy being on.
Yeah, that's good. And hope everyone enjoys this evening's show. This is New World Order Chat Radio. Drygex, and guest host is Saki. So have a good evening, and we'll be back next week with our, hopefully on topic, with Shelter.
Shelter.
Yep, great.
Yep, I'll hopefully see you then.
Yep, see you then.